So Dominique, we've got Anna in the studio with us this afternoon. What are you going to be speaking to her about?
Yeah, so Anna Sedgley, incredible woman. And for our listeners today, we are going to be exploring the role of CFO into NED. So I know lots of people are keen to get those NED roles, and Anna's going to talk a bit more about how she got it. And hopefully we can understand a bit more about what it takes to be a good NED.
Yeah, absolutely. And, most women that I speak to, or to be honest, any finance leader is constantly looking up and going, how do I get there? How do I get there?
Hopefully Anna will shortly tell us.
Fantastic.
Yeah, brilliant. So we are here today with the amazing Anna Sedgley. Anna, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me, Dominique.
You're welcome. So please, Anna, tell us a little bit about you, who you are, where you are at the moment, and what you're up to.
So I am a chartered accountant. I was a CFO and a COO, and I'm now mainly an NED, non-executive director. And I'm really looking forward to our chat today, Dominique, to talk about how I became an NED. It's something that I would have loved to have heard a few years ago, and sharing it with our Potentia community.
No, amazing. I think people will be delighted and privileged to hear it. But let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
How did you get to be a CFO? It was probably an interesting story right there.
Yeah. So I suppose the pivotal moment was joining Sky, and about year 2000 it was. And back then Sky only had 2.5, 3 million customers. So it was at a time where the business was really growing a lot. And the Sky Finance team, I think, is widely recognized as being very innovative in the program that they run, because we were able to rotate to all parts of the business. So I felt that I got FP&A experience in the arts. So I looked after Sky One and Sky News for a period of time. I got experience in the technology and engineering side of the business, in group, which is its own thing again, as all of the finance people on this listening will know. And then I ended up being the finance director for the customer group, which was the call centers, the supply chain, and then, of course, the marketing and the subscriber responsibility. So I learned a huge amount in a very short amount of time in a really fast-paced, demanding company. And then my husband got a job in the United States. And I was really lucky because I was with News Corp, who owned Sky at the time. They arranged for me to move to a company that they had just purchased there called Dow Jones. And News Corp had bought that because they were after the Wall Street Journal, which is sort of the main asset, or was the main asset at the time of Dow Jones. And really, I had a couple of years out. I was working part-time for Dow Jones, and I was sort of resettling our family because we'd moved. And then when we took the decision to stay in the US, that's when I got really serious about accelerating my career again. After, it wasn't a full break, it was only actually 8 weeks, I think, break, but sort of part-time for about 1.5 years. And then I became deputy CFO, and then I became CFO. So it didn't happen as I would have planned it in my head, because it happened in the US. And I think that's one of my sort of proudest days. Actually, it was standing on the pavement of 6th Avenue, looking at 1211, the building I was in, looking up to the skyscraper and thinking, oh my God, I'm from South Australia. I'm now CFO of a business here in New York. So that was a pretty wild day. And that's how I got CFO. So I'm telling you all the good bits. There are a lot of, I like to say, snakes and ladders. I've just given you a shortcut on the ladders on how I got to CFO, but there were a lot of snakes along the way as well.
Well, we should definitely talk about the snakes, but I can imagine that I don't know how old you would have been, but like looking up with a new family kind of transitioned over to the US and then looking up at this building. That sounds incredible.
Bloody hell, what have I done? I've got to go in there now and do the job. But yeah, it worked out.
So tell me then, so there obviously were some ladders, but I think probably self-made ladders. They don't just pop out of nowhere. So tell me about the ladders. What were the big kind of pivotal moments that really propelled you think to that?
I think the most important ladders were ones that were put there for me by somebody I'd already done a good job for or with. So again, one of my good friends who used to work with me used to say that he used an analogy of like mountain climbing, where you're all chained together, and as everybody rises, they pull everybody up behind them. And so I was really fortunate I was fortunate, plus I worked hard at it, to develop relationships with people who were also heading places. And so twice, in fact, two of my biggest appointments, first into finance director at Sky, and I was the first female to take that role, and then the CFO role, both came out of the blue because both had business partners who has said that they wanted me to be their finance person, and they insisted upon it. And so, you know, in the years that preceded that, where I was working hard for them and, you know, getting along well with them, and we worked together and solved lots of problems, I didn't have an expectation that they would create opportunities for me, but that is how it happened. So I think it's always really important to make sure you're working with people who enjoy providing opportunities for people around them. I think that's kind of the takeaway. And I was really lucky because that's the culture of News Corp.
And it's probably relatively fortunate that they were of high caliber and were going places. But please don't underestimate you. That's not just luck. That's because of your hard graft and your amazing. Amazing. They wouldn't have just pulled anybody up. So
I mean, it was true. Yeah, true. I mean, I always thought like I'll just take the next job. I had this rule as I was going up the ladders, always say yes. Yeah. So every time I was offered something, even if it was at great inconvenience, I would say yes. And now with hindsight, you know, that possibly wasn't necessary, and that I also, not everybody listening to this should adopt that same philosophy. But that was what I had in my head. If I'm offered something, I'm saying yes, and I'll work out how to manage it later. And then I thought I will just keep going until there's a job I can't do. Yeah. And when I hit the job that I can't do, or when it's too much, I'll say I'm ready to stop. Yeah. And so the ladders came, and you know, you have to work very hard when you're in a step up every time. But then after, I always think 1 year to scramble, 1 year to improve, 1 year to look for what's next. Yeah. 3 years, you should look for your next.
I always think in threes. I hadn't done those threes. Yeah. I love that. So 1 year to scramble, which was what? Get to grips with everything.
Get to grips with everything. Next year to fix it and significantly improve it. Year 3, enjoy and look for what's next.
Love that. I love that. So talk to me that you mentioned the NED role.
Yes.
And that's something that we're really keen to explore on these series. And lots of CFOs are really keen, myself included, how to become this NED. So tell us, you've currently got a few NED roles.
I do. I have 5 things now. So the first one came after I'd left News Corp. And it was actually when I was still in the US, and I think it was at the beginning of the pandemic. And at News Corp, there was actually a policy that you weren't able to take outside board roles. Mm-hmm. That was and I don't know if it still is, but that was a very, very firm policy. I was able to take industry board roles while I was there. And so that's a good starting spot for people, because often organizations where you're making donations or industry bodies, they'll often have a representative from the major companies on their trade board. So I was able to do News Media Alliance and a couple of others in the US, which I really enjoyed. And that gets you a little bit of your feet under the desk about process and even about we'll come back maybe to the dynamics of how you behave in a boardroom, but it's sort of safe starting place, if you will. So I'd done a bit of that, but when I left News Corp, I became able to look at external things. And the first thing that sort of approached me was again through a ladder, actually, from somebody who had worked with me back in the year 2000 when I was an analyst at Sky. And
you must have made a really good impression.
Well, I don't know about that. I think I might have made a really bad one, Neil. I don't know. I have to ask Neil. Well, maybe I did in the end, if he thought of me. So he was working in Sydney, and he works for a small family office, or a family office investment group. And they had taken a stake in a company in the US, and they were thinking about going public in the US or in Australia. And I'm actually triple citizen. So I had a passport in both citizenship in both locations.
Yeah.
So, and they wanted somebody to chair an audit committee, and it wasn't yet public. So I was pretty well qualified, and I gave them optionality about where they would choose to list. So that actually was really unexpected windfall to get that role at Fiscal Note. And that's been fantastic. I've been with them since, I think it's 4 years now. And actually at the beginning, we didn't get paid because we were as directors, and that was fine because I was learning and the board, some incredible board members to learn from in my first actual financial, corporate board. We have a professor from Stanford. We have used to be a professor at Stanford, a governor, an amazing military leader, and some brilliant investors are on the board. So I was blessed to be in amazing company. And I think that's one thing to check, like who are the other board members? Okay. Are you going to learn from them? That's part of your diligence about whether this is a good organization to join. And so Fiscal Note went public. And that was incredible to be chairing the audit committee with all of the regulatory hurdles and steps that you had to do to IPO on the New York Stock Exchange, or actually we did a DSPAC on the New York Stock Exchange. And then the step up from being a privately owned company to being a public company, and what that means for financial reporting and audit. And now we're actually doing the next step up on SOX. So that has been wonderful, and I've learned a huge amount, and I love working with them, and it's kept one foot for me in the US, which I'm really grateful for.
I've never heard anyone so excited about SOX. This is...
See, the fun thing is when you're an NED, you don't do the SOX.
Yeah.
You check that the SOX has been done, and you ask questions about the SOX. You dig into it. Yeah. And you're the world's biggest SOX cheerleader for the team. Yeah. And you are open ears to hear, for example, I have a monthly call with the auditor, the partner and the senior manager, and they tell me what they think's going on. And then I'll speak to the CFO and the finance director and make sure that I've got their side. And then we, have quite frequent audit committee meetings. So, I hear things, but I'm not actually doing the testing. I'm not actually building the controls. So some of the work that I've done earlier on in my career has been valuable because it all ladders up.
As an NED, you must be, especially with the breadth of companies that you have, so many new things or things that haven't crossed your path before. How do you, without the sort of fear of imposter syndrome creeping in and this sort of, how do you tackle these new things that you're coming across your desk?
This might alienate you and some people listening. I try not to do imposter syndrome. I have lots of other problems, Dominique. I'm just not counting that one as being one of my problems. So, when you get that little voice, oh, I shouldn't be here or whatever, just, stop it. Because I think there's a difference between nerves and being sort of a bit anxious, excited, nervy about doing something. That is normal. I think that's a sign that you're doing the right thing because you're stretching your capabilities.
100%.
What you don't follow that with is, oh, I better step back. Yeah. I don't belong. I do the first bit all the time. I try not to take myself back out of the game by talking myself out. So that's the one thing I'm quite strict with myself on. So what I find is I get a little bit more embarrassed. I have to do a lot more of my own research. And thank goodness for AI, because that's made research so much easier.
So much easier.
So much easier. Because I think when you're a CFO or an NED, people expect you to be familiar with all of the acronyms and all of the, technical standards and we'll talk about it. But I've just been on the board now of 2 UK-based charities and a global private public partnership board. And that is a whole nother universe again. And I was actually at a charities conference yesterday, and I know nothing about the Charities Commission. I mean, embarrassingly nothing. So I think rather than be imposter, like I don't belong there, my head goes, wow, I'm really embarrassed. I don't know any of this. Like they're talking about charity SORP, and I'm like, what? I need to go away and do my own work. So short answer, I get caught out all the time. Yeah. I make frantic notes and go and teach myself everything. Sometimes if it's a meeting that you can have a laptop, I'm live learning.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll always go and follow up. Or if it's critical for the conversation, I just ask.
Yeah. I mean, you're making me feel so much better about my use of AI in meetings to understand what does this acronym mean. I completely agree with you.
I think it's really valuable.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on imposter syndrome as well. For me, I don't get this, oh gosh, I shouldn't be here. I get this, oh gosh, isn't this exciting that I'm learning? Like and instead of embarrassment, it's this like absolute desire to want to learn more. So I think I share that with you. But I get a bit embarrassed if I was to tell you how much time I spend researching or like Googling things and things like that. And AI has made things so much easier.
It has. I mean, people just rattle off because one thing I really make a point to remember, actually two things I make a very, very deliberate point to remember. One, somebody has spent 20, 50, 100 hours thinking about something. Then they come and talk to you about it for 5 minutes, and they expect you to understand what they've said and give them feedback.
And probably 10 people have done that day.
Yeah. And they've had 100 hours to think about it. Yeah. So there's a very big gap. I can't remember the phrase for it, but there's disproportionality and knowledge there. And the other thing when you look up is you only ever see the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more information that very senior people have that you're not privy to. And that's true in the boardroom as well. So for example, I'll use the Global Alliance of Vaccines, Gavi, which I joined in January. That is attended, the board is comprised of members from the World Bank, from UNICEF, from the Gates Foundation, governments, policy, it's public health, and I've only ever been a media CFO. So I'm very, very much, big pharma is there, small pharma's there. I'm very much out of my comfort zone. And then because I'm new, I'm just trying to play the new card in breaks and following up with people over coffees like, can you just explain that to me? Or, follow-ups. No one's born knowing everything.
And I thank you for sharing with me about how you got into an NED role. Tell me, why did you stop being a CFO and move into NED work?
I think I did a calculation that said I had done a 37.5-hour week times 40 years. I'd done that in 25 years.
Oh gosh.
And so I was like, okay, I'm done, right? I just felt it. I just thought I'm done. I mean, I got personal finance advice beforehand because you can jump back in after a couple of years, but I think after 2 years, maybe you're sort of a bit out of the visibility, I suppose. But I knew I had finished. And I knew I'd enjoyed doing fiscal notes so much that I wanted to do more things like that.
Did you feel finished? Were you burnt out?
Yeah. Burnt out, yes, but I think that's not necessarily the best way to go. I think, again, talk about regrets. I think it's better to go out on a high on your own terms. But we all know that exiting an organization is never that simple. Gone are the days of 65 and a watch, and, a warm glass of wine in the office. So really now people move on when they're no longer the right person to take the job forward. I felt that in my last executive role, I'd done what I came to do. I hadn't completed it, but I'd put it onto the rails. And I just felt tired. I just felt like I've done it. I've got nothing more to learn or prove, and I wanted to have a break and then turn to non-exec while I'm young enough to really enjoy it and have a decent career as a non-exec. And so with Fiscal Note, I knew that I enjoyed it and I could do it. So I did stop. I didn't look for another role. I was very, takes a lot of strength to say no to interesting offers. But I've held the line and said no to CFO roles. And then it's just, I think it's a bit of a misunderstanding that non-exec director roles roll around quite quickly. They don't. Most boards only replace, one person or two people every few years. Yeah. So you can't really pick the boards and then aim the role. You've got to see what boards are searching. Yeah. And I also made a big change from the original plan, which was I decided to go into nonprofit, much more heavy into nonprofit rather than for-profit. And the reason was actually right now twofold. 2024 and now there hasn't been much turnover in the UK PLC board positions. So there's not a huge amount of vacancies out there. I also felt that I had worked so hard for very successful commercial organizations. I felt that it was time to do something more worthwhile.
To give back.
Give back. And I also thought I want to be with people. The most important thing for me in my non-exec director search was to be in rooms that I've never been in before. And so Gavi is a great example of that. I had never met anyone from UNICEF, which I think is just about the coolest organization in the world. So to actually be able to bring my finance skills and use that as my reason and my media skills to be a seat at the table, that's just been a privilege. And, Gavi vaccinates billions of children globally and saves millions of lives. So it doesn't really get better than that.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So you feel like you've come full into
you don't get paid for these ones. I should just make that really clear to everybody. This is a labor of love. So you can't stop exec life until you've run the spreadsheet on
getting your financial advisor in.
But when you have, it's really rewarding.
So tell me then, Anna, what's next? It sounds like everything's super exciting.
Yeah, just this. Just this. I'm really loving it. I'm meeting unbelievably different people. It's given me time to do Potentia, which I am really enjoying working with all the women. It's a great community. We've had a good time. And I'm just enjoying life. And when you're not in a full-time job, you get to enjoy the unseasonably warm weather and you get to travel a bit more. I've got family in lots of different places and it's nice to be able to just jump on a plane and see them and work remotely all the time. And I'm never letting anyone down. I think when you've got a very large team or, CFO as well, you're always accountable directly, daily to so many people. And that's a really heavy thing to carry. And I put that down now.
Sounds amazing. Sounds hugely aspirational. Right. Anna, quick question for you. I'm going to ask all of our guests this.
Okay.
Do you think your gender has ever impacted your career, either positively or negatively?
I think definitely, yes. Both. I think it can be a negative when you're stereotyped, particularly when you're younger and less accomplished. And again, back in the day, I know it's better now, but it was pretty rough early on. Positively, I once I reached a certain level of seniority, I thought I'm just going to embrace being female and use that as a way of standing out. And now actually there's women everywhere and I've used it as a way of creating instant community, actually. So often if I'm in a room full of people I don't know, so again, I'll use a Gavi example, room full of 50, 80 people I don't know, I tend to approach the women first. And I think that, we've kind of got a bit of a code because we've all been there. We all know how ghastly it is to stand by yourself. So you'll never make a mistake if you walk up to a woman who's standing alone at a work event.
I've noticed I'm bumping into more and more the same women at these events.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we do the full circle.
Yeah.
And I just think you assume you have a sort of a meeting of the minds without even speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Now, one other question for you before I let you go. I'm going to send a bouquet of flowers.
Oh, so sweet.
To somebody of your choosing, somebody that supported you, championed you, cheerleaded you. Who would you like me to send the flowers to?
Well, this is a bit of a comedy answer for people who know me, who are listening. And it's to a male colleague or a male boss I had. And his main thing that he taught me and many other women in the organization was that we had to care less. And it was a bit of a joke at the beginning. But I think he found it as the only way to manage us because we would be so stressed about everything being perfect and working so hard. And I guess he was sitting above where he could see how hard we were working and then see how hard some of our colleagues were working. And he would be like, they don't care as much as you. Like, what are you doing? And so for over 20 years, I've received text messages, now WhatsApp messages, every time I've had a work issue or crisis, and they just say care less. And it's always made me laugh. And there is some truth.
I mean,
some truth in it. So I'm sure he'd love your flowers.
Of course. Well, it's obviously served you very well. I think it's great advice. We'll get you his name and address and we'll make sure to celebrate.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Anna, thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to speaking again soon.
I look forward to listening to all of them. Thank you.
So Dominique, how did that go? What have you learned today from Anna?
I really enjoyed it. I hope the listeners did too. And so I learned there's this... I always think in threes, and Anna talked about 3 years in a role. I have done more than 3 years in a role, but she was talking about that the first year is the scramble. It's like where you make a bit of a mess or you get to grips with things, I think is what she's trying to say. The second year is about fixing and improving things. And then the third year is enjoying and working out what's next. And I love that. For someone that thinks in threes and for someone that's new in a job at the moment, I love the fact that not everything's going to be fixed. I won't necessarily be enjoying it every day, nailing it, but that's going to come.
This is your scramble.
Yeah, I'm in my scramble. For those of you in your scramble, it will come, I think, was what I took from that. So I love that. And then the other thing I learned was, I share this with her, is this sort of concept of imposter syndrome. I feel often, oh gosh, I don't know what I'm doing, or I don't know what I'm, what I'm supposed to do next. But Anna gave me this huge confidence that that's okay.
Yeah.
She's researching and Googling probably as much as I am, which is great. And the use of AI also in research. So that made me feel a lot better that I'm not sort of on my own there. And I hope that that's something people can feel when they're listening to our podcast, as they're not on their own. But also that when you are feeling that sort of imposter, what may feel an imposter, like to flip it and say, well, this is a great learning experience.
Yes.
And I love that. I don't know if you've sort of spoken to Anna about that before, but I love that.
I haven't actually. That's not come up before. But again, lots of people that we meet within our course of our jobs talk a lot about feeling imposter syndrome, especially after coming back from mat leave or, I don't know, starting a new job, feeling like perhaps you don't fit because you don't know everything about what you're doing. And yes, to take it as, rather than a negative, to flip it into a positive and go, no, it's okay.
And to know that someone like Anna, CFO of the Dow Jones.
Absolutely.
And that she feels like that and that she flips it. And that's probably something that's driven so much success for her, flipping it into, I'm learning. I'm privileged to be in these rooms and have these great opportunities to learn. So that really resonated with me. I share that with her. So
sounds like a great takeaway.
No, super. I really enjoyed it. I think she's a great guest. So I really enjoyed talking to Anna. I think we learnt a great deal. I've certainly got thinking about sort of what it takes to be an NED. And I look forward to seeing you all again very soon.
Thanks again for hosting, Dominique.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks, Norris.